Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of YarninBlak. Today I've got a really special friend of mine on Indi. I'll introduce you to Indi in a second. But first I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm currently calling in from. I'm here in Baldwin Q on the beautiful lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I'd like to pay respect to my elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to acknowledge any other Aboriginal people that are here today, including my wonderful, beautiful guest, Indi. How are you?
Good. Nervous. Excited though.
Yeah. Um, just so people who may not know who are you? Where are you from?
Yep. So my name's Indy Peters. I grew up in Wemba Wemba country in Swan Hill. I've been currently living in Melbourne since I was 12. I was granted the amazing opportunity to have a Indigenous scholarship. So my high school was actually paid for. So that was an amazing experience. And yeah, so I grew up in the community in Swan Hill, um, and then had a sort of little bit of a break being in Melbourne. Didn't know where I was going, and especially being in a private school, being one of the few Indigenous children, sort of like lost contact with my culture. But working through that again now with my position, I'm currently working in an Aboriginal community controlled org, and I'm the youth coordinator there. So I've learned so much, and yeah, so that's how it's good. And that's me.
So you were about 12 when you moved from Swan Hill. So that you moved down for high school.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So why did you choose to go to a private school? What was it attractive about the scholarship that got you into the school?
Yeah, so the scholarship, they all the participants go to a private school. What attracted me is that um, I guess Swan Hill was very small when I was growing up, and so it was very tiny country town. And who wouldn't want to be 12 and have the experience of exploring the big city world? So that was also that. But my mum and my nan really encouraged me because at the time it was very common, very rampant in the community of drug and alcohol with the Aboriginal community. And so they sort of wanted to also get me out of there, and proceed further. I was actually the first person on both my family side to even pass year 12.
Yeah.
So and that was just because that amazing, it was always an amazing opportunity, and so they always just pushed me to really exceed further than they did because they didn't have that opportunity. And so when the time came, it was just like, when was I ever going to get the chance to do this? So a lot of nights crying, I tell you that.
But I just want to jump in for a second. That's a really important point that you brought up about the fact that you were like the first in your family ever to get to year 12, because I don't think people, or especially our non-Indigenous listeners, realize how recent in history it is for our people to actually get to year 12.
Yeah, I think the furthest was like year 11, or they were in the last year of year 12 and they fell out. So it was
Or,
very,
or fell.
very, yeah. It was very I think at the time I had like a lot of pressure on myself,
Yeah.
being the first one, and then I was going straight into uni straight after. So everyone's like, "Oh, you should be this kind." Because I wanted to be a surgeon when I grew up. So everyone's like, "You should be this kind of doctor. You should do this, or you should do plastic surgery so I can look better for myself."
Yeah. I don't
But
know how to do plastic surgery on yourself though.
yeah, but yeah. So in my time, I've actually changed in my career path. I was doing nursing, and then I've done teaching, and now I'm in community services, which I think I've found my little niche. So um,
So
but yeah.
from year 12, did you go straight into nursing?
Yes, I went straight into nursing the year after I was at ACU. So I
Yeah.
did nursing for a year, and then I then went into teaching. So did a course, and it was just wasn't great. in the sense that it was sort of the high school where the participants were like doing high school girl stuff, and I'm just like, nah. So then took 6 months off. I went back home to Swan Hill and I helped my family in the sense of with cousins. So they end up in our care for external reasons. And I was then helping with doing the home. I became the tutor essentially. So I was helping with the tutoring because they were at least like 1 or 2 years behind their actual year level. And so in those 6 months got them up to maybe just like 6 months shy of where they're supposed to be, which is really good. And then did teaching for 3 years, Bachelor of Education. And then decided just one night, teaching's not for me. Then I dropped teaching, then straight into applying for a diploma in community services. And so did that. And currently working full time, but I've actually got the chance to have a Bachelor of Social Work, my tuition scholarship. So that's with Deakin online. So I'm hoping to possibly do that next year while also working since it's online. But so that's my little journey. Very roundabout. It's very long.
So at the moment, you're working as a youth worker lead,
Yes,
coordinator. What does that involve?
So I guess it really involves. So I have a small team of youth workers. So I have 2 other workers below me, and they essentially help me plan the normal years because we've got 3 different year levels for youth groups. So we've got our 6 to 12s, our 13 to 17s, and our 18 to 25s, so our young adults. And then we've also got like other projects because we're just got different funding bodies. So it's just a sense of creating programs for each of the year levels that sort of touch on culture in one way or another. So we've had I think the most popular one for our 6 to 12 was the parents absolutely loved the idea of we had Dreamtime story puppets. So it was the first time, we had them read the Dreamtime story. We actually then get them to do the puppet characters, and then they take it back to the family and then tell them the story. So that was that was amazing for the family. We've also done possum skins, doing those cultural activities. We've done the first time for our young ones in actually making their own clap sticks. So it was like doing the whole whittling down and actually putting the energy into it, and all that kind of stuff. And just in a sense with some of the groups is not only touching culture but adult life skills and all that kind of stuff for the older group. And just in the end, it's all about making connections, building that rapport, making them feel comfortable, and building their confidence in themselves, in the sense that some of them might be on their journey in learning about culture. They weren't brought up, or they've just found out, and just exploring this new world. So it's just a sense of building their confidence, really.
Because you would get a lot of kids that are just not learning about their cultural identity, and they might come to you and go, like, "Hey, auntie."
I've been called auntie plenty of times already. I'm like, I'm only 28. Please.
Like, hey, auntie. Where do I start looking? What do I need to do to find out more? What would you suggest as a good starting point?
I would always suggest to see if it's with their family, if they're comfortable even explaining that. I know some of them, they're like, we were only just told when the grandparent was literally like on their deathbed, and trying to navigate that. But I think it's really all come down to identity. And even I myself, like growing up in like knowing who I was, knowing where I came from, even I've experienced like that sort of identity crisis, like, oh, what if I'm not like Black enough, Yes, I got the Indigenous features, but like it could be like someone's always going to be blacker than me and all that kind of stuff. So we always, and it's a pretty common phrase, is that no matter how much milk you put in the coffee, it's still coffee in a sense, or it's still tea, whether you use that. And it's actually one of the young people's favorite sort of phrase, because they sort of understand that, you know, yes, our history happened, but, you know, we're still going strong. And I guess I would just really encourage them to do their own research in their culture. Some of them might not know who their mob is, but just like the general stuff of the cultural aspect is, you know, understanding or even attending different events and that kind of stuff. So they sort of had that feeling of community around them.
Yeah. What do you get out of working with community?
I really love the engagement. I really do. I was actually just joking around with a nanny. I was like, "Oh, I'll take you to ice hockey one day, huh?" She was like, "Yeah, yeah." I was like, "Oh, yeah, we'll go to a 2 o'clock game." And she was like, "Oh, yeah." I was like, "Or is that nap time?" And so she just laughed. And it's just the community engagement. I really, really enjoy, you know, when people feel comfortable enough to really open up and tell some of their stories. And yeah, I actually used to work in the pantry, the food pantry assistance program here. And I was only doing that, I think, casual, so only on the Wednesday. And I then went for another job to sort of coincide with the job that I had, and actually turned it down because I was like, I need my Wednesday free, because I really like engaging with the community when they come in, even though they were having a hard time, you know, with, because they need the food assistance, you know, they always came in and be like, "Oh, how you going? You know, oh, this has happened." And they were just like really accepting and, you know, just wanting to have a good old yarn. And that's what I really love, I think. Sort of then having that period in high school where I didn't feel connected, and now coming into my adulthood where I feel very connected, and I've never felt judged, and they're always up for a good yarn. So yeah.
You know, we talk a bit about, I was going to ask you another question first about growing up. When you were at school, either in primary school or high school, how much Aboriginal studies did you actually learn at school?
So I think in primary, because it was so, like, the majority of the population was Indigenous at the time when I was in that year level, pretty much everything sort of had an Aboriginal sort of influence. Like we would always have, like, the school start with Numachi Tell Cook, and the young kids will go Tell Cook, and that's like, "Good morning, how are you?" And then you'll be like, "Good morning, I'm good." And so that was really implemented into the primary school where I grew up. And I think each year level or each term you had something to do with, like, an auntie coming in, and, you know, they're always very open with the events going on for Indigenous students. They had, like, specific Indigenous programs at school. I think it was every Thursday afternoon. And it was just like the Koorie kids come in, having a good time together, having a yarn. And then it was also like a homework club as well. So also did some of your homework, and they had, like, people in there to help you with problems. But it was also that connectedness. But I think when I went to high school, especially in a private school, it was really harder. They didn't have a lot of other Indigenous students. Like, I was very much the first Indigenous contact for a lot of my friends in high school. So that was very shocking in a sense. And I guess you sort of, like, grow up, and they're always so willing, but there's also that sort of thinking, you know, of the tokenism around Aboriginal. So they're sort of like asking all the stereotypical questions and all that kind of stuff. And I think you learn at a young age that you just got to sort of roll with it and have fun. Like, we joked around with some friends, obviously not Indigenous, and we're like, "Oh yeah, you know, if you want to get out of class, we're going to have to do a rain dance if you want it to rain. So we got them dancing in the back of the boarding house to do a rain dance, and didn't even like tell them until like when I finished in year 12. I'm like, you do realize that was like the fakest rain dance you could do. We don't do rain dances. What are you talking about? And they're like, oh my god, it's so embarrassing. So I guess you sort of like as you grow up, you sort of like roll with the punches and you have fun with it, even though it sort of does chip at you a little bit. But there wasn't really a lot of Aboriginal engagement. So I think the only one I had was really in high school at, I think, year 10. We only had like a few weeks sort of focused on Indigenous history, and the rest was like the American dream and all that, and all the other key sort of history time periods. But we didn't really have a lot to do for Indigenous, which is, you think would be crazy, because how can you not learn about your own history? And it was like a typical, when I watch the Rubber Proof Fence, and it's just like, okay, yeah. So, but I think once a year they had like an Indigenous performer come in, and yeah. But other than that, there wasn't really any engagement around the culture of Indigenous students, or just Indigenous culture in general.
Yeah. So would you have liked some of the programs that you deliver now being delivered when you were a kid?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's sort of what we base it on. Like, each term we're doing possum skins to sort of get the young ones building their possum skin cloaks, But I used to dance in primary school. I used to do, when Croc was still a thing, I used to do the dance group and participate in Croc. But when I got to high school, like, just going from like dancing and being engaged to like nothing, like you don't really have like the people talking around you, like in Koorie language, there's no dance opportunities. And I guess they sort of didn't understand really how to navigate Indigenous students, because like they didn't even come to us to be like, oh, we've actually gone out and had a look, like, these are Indigenous groups out here, youth groups. And I think if we had that, that was really good. I think the only time we really did that was I was in year 8 or 9, and we partnered with Scotch College just up the road, and we did like AIM tutoring. I think it was like twice a week, and that only happened for like a term, and then it was like discontinued. So that was really the only other time, other than like our student support officers taking us out to, like the Indigenous rounds for the football, and like going for the long walk and all that kind of stuff. And just even like going to the like NAIDOC events, we weren't even notified of that either. So it really felt disconnected going into that sort of environment. Like, don't get me wrong, I would love to do it again, given the opportunity, because I can't sort of not thank my opportunity for getting me to where I am at currently. But if I knew then what I know now, I would definitely reach out to like these type of youth groups and that kind of stuff. It's so important. Sometimes we don't have like specified activities, but it's still just like coming together with your like mob in a sense. It's just that it's still that like cultural connection and like-minded people understanding in a way of what all Indigenous people have gone through. So there's still a level of understanding, but some people might have more sort of experiences than others, but there's still that baseline of, we have that connectedness because this happened to our culture. But yeah.
Now, coming from Swan Hill to Melbourne, can you remember any cultural shock that you went through? Like, in the big city?
I think my most cultural shock was, I think growing up, my actual blackness like leached out of me. I was so dark coming from like little hot little country, coming into the cold city. Like I just like got so pale, and that was one. Definitely, I think the way that you talk as well. I had to like sort of code switch in a way. So when I go home on the holidays, I'd be talking one way to the family, and then I come back to school and I'm talking like more proper. I had one lady say, she asked me to help to text her daughter, and I was like, oh, so blah blah blah. H. She's like, it's not H, it's H. You're from this school. You should know how to pronounce it properly. I'm like, lady, you asked me for help. Like,
yeah.
But and I guess in a sense, yeah, it definitely was a shock in the sense that I think that it's more that disconnect again coming back that coming to that, and then there was some like people in the boarding house that the cultures are very similar in a way, that they're very family orientated and all that kind of stuff, but it's even the way that you talk with community and then you talk to someone else and your humor's not taken the same way. So I'm like, oh, I had to learn that very hard, that my humor was not going to be taken the same way as black fellas will take it. Like there was some offense taken sometimes, and I was like, oh god. But yeah.
The question I was going to ask you is the word reconciliation gets thrown around a lot, and we just had Reconciliation Week. What does reconciliation mean to you?
I think reconciliation to me actually means putting in the work to come together. As I said, it's the word's thrown around and it's always talking about, closing the gap. But we have seen some people and some statistics probably close, but it's nowhere near probably where we should be going. And it's like, well, how do we actually take the actions and take the steps to actually close that gap? But then again, it's like, how can we have a whole week of reconciliation, but then we still have issues around racism? And just recently with the Welcome to Country, and how that was taken into question, and sort of the split vote of that, or the split vote of the referendum. I just think it's sort of comes down to actually understanding the information that's being put out there. But it's all about action, really. Like, you can't go anywhere and sort of close the gaps on anything without action. And I think that's where it kind of gets us, where we'll have those barriers still if we don't actually put anything in place to get past them.
Yeah. Cultural safety is another term that gets thrown around a lot. What makes you feel culturally safe when you go to a service?
I think it's in the sense of how I'm being treated. I think you can have like I don't know if this makes sense, but in the way some words can be taken, but I think it's the intent behind the words that are used. So it might be like, say, Aborigines. Like, I don't particularly like that word, but you can understand how someone means it in a curious way, like, oh, do you prefer this way? Then rather saying someone's intent to use it as a derogatory. I think that, in a sense, like, I would still feel culturally safe being called Aborigine by someone who's using it in a way, in the term that of being curious.
Yeah.
And it's all just comes down to the intent of the interaction with someone. If they're intending to, cause you distress because of your background and your culture. But I'm not going to, go targeting someone. Not that I target someone, but I'm not going to be, the typical Black person, angry Black woman that's standing up for myself because someone's asked something, that's not appropriate that you would ask, but, they're curious to saying whether that is appropriate to say, rather than knowing it's not okay to be used and intentionally using it to harm someone. So.
And you brought up a little concept then about sometimes being viewed or could be being viewed as the angry Black woman.
Yeah.
But do you find that for a lot of us Aboriginal people, when we call out cultural safety and the other person's reaction is a bit of white anxiety coming through,
Yeah.
that we get accused of being angry and Black angry people.
Yeah.
When we've just tried to highlight how offensive something was.
Yeah. I guess now it's probably more taken into account because everyone's so like conscious of offending people, whether it be engaging with Indigenous people or the LGBTQIA plus community. There's always that anxiety around like, oh God, am I going to say something that's going to offend them? How are they going to react? And so there's some people, or in all cultures and all backgrounds, there's still going to be that kind of that stereotypical person that's going to still impact the way people view the probably hundreds that they've engaged with and not known that they're of that cultural background, and still impact. But it's always it's always going to be like, oh, don't upset them, you don't know how they're going to react. Or, but like you said, it's always that sort of fear of how they're going to react, in the sense of, are they going to be the stereotypical person and be like, blow their top and start yelling and, who I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but you might be calling them a dog or something, but that's not technically a swear word, but yeah.
Hey, what makes a person an elder in your view?
I've actually sort of struggled this in a way. I've been taught like it might be age requirement. I think 57 was thrown out. I'm like, that's such a random, like, specific age. But I grew up with the teaching from my mum that, you respect your elders, but, you respect people who respect you also. And I think, and I'm not going to not call an elder that's considered by community auntie or uncle, but for me, for someone who's an elder, they have their respect, they show respect, and, they're still helping other people and not sort of like using that to expect something back.
Yeah.
Because I think I've like, how can an elder be, I had this conversation, I was like, how can I show respect to an elder if, they might be doing drugs and alcohol?
Yeah.
Like, and it's, I think because as an elder, you're a pillar and you're held at a high standard than just the general community member. And it's just like, how can you still have that high sort of role in the community if you're doing drugs and alcohol, or you possibly might have domestic violence, or you never know, just things that sort of I wouldn't expect to actually sort of respect someone at that such high level if they were participating in such activities. And so it's sort of, I find that sometimes it can be a little minefield to navigate a conversation around eldership. But the elders that I've engaged, they're quite, like, they're amazing. Like, I can talk for them for hours, and just the knowledge that they hold, and, elders, they're sort of wanting to pass on that knowledge before, they pass on themselves. And they always just want to have a chat about community, knowledge and pass that on. I think that's what really makes an elder, again, just all that knowledge and pass it on, and not holding people to the expectations of gaining something back by giving them something, I guess. So
Yeah. Now, Aboriginal leadership's really important, and we have a lot of young people coming through, both staff members and community. In a way, you're a leader if you're leading a team, definitely. But what leadership skills do you show or you try to demonstrate for younger people, staff or young clients in leadership?
I've this is quite funny. I always find it hard for myself thinking of leadership qualities. I think that a lot of people do. They always have the hard time picking it for themselves. But I guess I try, and it's always, I think it all comes back down to kindness in a way. I'm not going to be that type of leader that's going to be like, you got to do this, and, really ride someone.
Yeah.
And because I wouldn't want to be in a position where my leadership person or my mentor was, negatively affecting me in any way. And I guess we sort of this goes back to our programs, is that resilience, confidence, self-esteem. Like our programs have social emotional well-being sessions. Sorry, it's the magpies. I feed them and now they're like hanging around. But yeah, so we try and build that self-confidence and that self-esteem. And we also touch on life adult skills. So it might be their reading or writing, who knows. But yeah, leadership's so broad, I guess, in a way as well.
Yeah.
Because you can have leadership that's in work, and then you have leadership in community, and you have leadership at home. So everyone's got leadership skills for different leadership roles, and they just don't know it. But leadership can mean so many things. But yeah,
I'm just watching the time. I've got a couple of last questions for you. My
Yep.
first question is, if I gave you $1 zillion and a magic wand, I don't have the $1 zillion on me, but I do actually have a magic wand, right? So you can borrow my magic wand.
Yeah, right.
$1 zillion and a million and $1 zillion and a million wands, I was going to say. $1 zillion and a magic wand, and said you could fix something in Aboriginal affairs, where would you start?
Oh, that's really hard. I think the first word that really came to me was, and it's so hard, is the culture around racism. Because we can have the lateral violence, as well, but we have the racism violence from non-Indigenous people. I really feel like that might be, for myself anyway, such a foundation, I guess, because we can't really excel anywhere if there's still that sort of pushback because of racist undertones and all that kind of stuff, both in and out of community. Whether, as I said, with that little phrase of, how much milk you put in coffee, it's still coffee. Yeah, that's a real hard question, I think, a real broad bet. For me, for what I would want, something to work on the racism and actually break that down to then go into the reconciliation to take those actions, but yeah.
My last question is, what would you like people to walk away from our yarn this afternoon?
I guess it always comes back like you don't know someone until you have a yarn with them, and you never know, you might have similar things that you've experienced, and that feeling of like you're not alone really. But I guess in a way that, if you are feeling disconnected, there's so many ways you can engage, that I wish I knew when I was younger. Whether it be, just those events, or, you might look at gathering places in your own area and, engage with them, or there's just, I just sort of wish people go out and feel more confident in themselves. But yeah.
Well, I'm just watching the time, so we know I have to go. But I want to say thank you very much for hanging out with me.
Yeah,
you know how much I love the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, and your support of the programs out at the gathering place, which is really desperately needed for our young people.
Yeah.
So, guys, I want to say thank you to Indy, and I'll see you guys in the next podcast. See you later.
Bye.